Once upon a time, stories weren't just for children. They were whispers in the dark, passed from one voice to another, filled with wonder, wisdom, and just a touch of mystery. Tonight, we return to the world of Grimm's fairy tales. Timeless stories that have lived for centuries. Some are familiar, some a little forgotten, but all carry that old magic that helps the world slow down and the mind drift gently to sleep. Where courage wears many faces, kindness tests the heart, and magic lingers in every shadow. From clever tailors to golden geese, from dancing princesses to whispering trees. But before we dive in, take a moment to like and subscribe if you enjoy these cozy times. And in the comments, let us know where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always a joy to see how far and wide our little bedtime circle reaches. Now, settle in. Let your breath slow, your eyes grow heavy, and your thoughts soften. The story begins now. The Elves and the Cobbler. There was once a cobbler who, through no fault of his own, had become so poor that at last he had nothing left but just enough leather to make one pair of shoes. In the evening he cut out the leather, intending to make it into shoes the next morning. His conscience was clear and his heart light despite his troubles. So he went quietly to bed, left his cares to heaven, and fell asleep. In the morning, after he had said his prayers and was about to sit down to work, he found the pair of shoes standing finished on his table. He was amazed and did not know what to make of it. He took the shoes in his hands to examine them more closely, and found they were so neatly made that not a stitch was out of place, just as if they were intended as a masterpiece. Soon after, a customer came in, and as the shoes pleased him so well, he paid more than the usual price for them, enough that the cobbler could buy leather for 2 pairs of shoes. He cut them out in the evening and went to bed early, intending to rise early the next morning to work, but that was unnecessary, for when he got up, the shoes were already finished. Customers soon bought them, paying enough that he could now buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. Again, he found them finished in the morning, and so it went on. Whatever he cut out in the evening was finished by morning, so that he soon had a comfortable living and eventually became quite well-to-do. One evening, not long before Christmas, as he and his wife were sitting by the fire, he said to her, "What do you say to staying up tonight to see who it is that lends us this helping hand?" His wife agreed, and they left a light burning, hiding themselves in the corner of the room behind some clothes that were hanging there. They watched to see what would happen. As soon as it was midnight, 2 little naked men came in, seated themselves at the cobbler's table, took up the work that was cut out, and began to stitch, sew, and hammer so skillfully and quickly with their little fingers that the cobbler could not take his eyes off them for astonishment. They did not stop until all was finished, and the shoes stood ready on the table. Then they ran quickly away. The next day, the wife said, "The little men have made us rich, and we ought to show our gratitude. They run about with nothing on, and must be cold. I'll tell you what. I will make them little shirts, coats, vests, and trousers, and knit each of them a pair of stockings, and you shall make them each a pair of shoes." The husband agreed, and one evening when everything was ready, they laid the presents on the table instead of the cut-out work, and then hid themselves to see what the little men would do. At midnight, they came bounding in, eager to get to their work. But when they saw no leather cut out, but instead the neat little garments placed ready for them, they stood for a moment in surprise, and then showed the greatest delight. They quickly put on the beautiful clothes, singing, "Now we're boys so fine and neat. Why cobble more for others' feet?" Then they danced and skipped and leaped over chairs and benches. At last they danced out of the door. From that time on they came no more. But as long as the cobbler lived, all went well with him, and whatever he undertook prospered. The brave little tailor. One summer morning, a little tailor was sitting on his table by the window. He was in good spirits and sewed with all his might. Then came a peasant woman down the street crying, "Good jam, cheap! Good jam, cheap!" This rang pleasantly in the tailor's ears. He stretched his delicate head out of the window and called, "Come up here, dear woman. Here you will get rid of your goods." The woman came up the 3 steps to the tailor with her heavy basket, and he made her unpack all the pots for him. He inspected each one, lifted it up, put his nose to it, and at length said, "The jam seems to me to be good. So weigh me out 4 ounces, dear woman, and if it is 1/4 of a pound, that is of no consequence." The woman, who had hoped to find a good sale, gave him what he desired, but went away quite angry and grumbling. "Now this jam shall be blessed by God," cried the little tailor, "and give me health and strength." So he brought the bread out of the cupboard, cut himself a piece right across the loaf, and spread the jam over it. "This won't taste bitter," said he, "but I will just finish the jacket before I take a bite." He laid the bread near him, sewed on, and in his joy made bigger and bigger stitches. In the meantime, the smell of the sweet jam rose to where the flies were sitting in great numbers, and they were attracted and descended on it in hosts. "Hi, who invited you?" said the little tailor, and drove the unbidden guests away. The flies, however, who understood no German, would not be turned away, but came back again in ever-increasing companies. The little tailor at last lost all patience, and drew a piece of cloth from the hole under his work-table, and saying, "Wait, and I will give it to you," struck it mercilessly on them. When he drew it away and counted, there lay before him no fewer than 7, dead and with legs stretched out. "Are you a fellow of that sort?" said he, and could not help admiring his own bravery. "The whole town shall know of this." And the little tailor hastened to cut himself a belt, stitched it, and embroidered on it in large letters, 7 at one stroke. "What the town?" he continued. "The whole world shall hear of it." And his heart wagged with joy like a lamb's tail. The tailor put on the belt and resolved to go forth into the world because he thought his workshop was too small for his valor. Before he went away, he sought about in the house to see if there was anything which he could take with him. However, he found nothing but an old cheese, and that he put in his pocket. In front of the door, he observed a bird which had caught itself in the thicket. It had to go into his pocket with the cheese. Now he took to the road boldly, and as he was light and nimble, he felt no fatigue. The road led him up a mountain, and when he had reached the highest point of it, there sat a powerful giant looking peacefully about him. The little tailor went bravely up, spoke to him, and said, "Good day, comrade. So you are sitting there overlooking the widespread world. I am just on my way thither and want to try my luck. Have you any inclination to go with me?" The giant looked contemptuously at the tailor and said, "You ragamuffin, you miserable creature." "Oh, indeed," answered the little tailor, and unbuttoned his coat, and showed the giant the belt. "There, may you read what kind of a man I am." The giant read, 7 at one stroke, and thought that they had been men whom the tailor had killed, and began to feel a little respect for the tiny fellow. Nevertheless, he wished to try him first, and took a stone in his hand and squeezed it together so that water dropped out of it. "Do that likewise," said the giant, "if you have strength." "Is that all?" said the tailor. "That is child's play with us," and put his hand into his pocket, brought out the soft cheese, and pressed it until the liquid ran out of it. "Faith," said he, "that was a little better, wasn't it?" The giant did not know what to say, and could not believe it of the little man. Then the giant picked up a stone and threw it so high that the eye could scarcely follow it. "Now, little mite of a man, do that likewise," said he. "Well thrown," said the tailor. "But after all the stone came down to earth again, I will throw you one which shall never come back at all." And he put his hand into his pocket, took out the bird, and threw it into the air. The bird, delighted with its liberty, rose, flew away, and did not come back. "How does that shot please you, comrade?" asked the tailor. "You can certainly throw," said the giant. "But now we will see if you are able to carry anything properly." He took the little tailor to a mighty oak tree which lay there felled on the ground, and said, "If you are strong enough, help me to carry the tree out of the forest." "Readily," answered the little man. "Take you the trunk on your shoulders, and I will raise up the branches and twigs. After all, they are the heaviest." The giant took the trunk on his shoulder. But the tailor seated himself on a branch, and the giant, who could not look round, had to carry away the whole tree, and the little tailor into the bargain. He behind was quite merry and happy, and whistled the song. 3 tailors rode forth from the gate, as if carrying the tree were child's play. The giant, after he had dragged the heavy burden part of the way, could go no further and cried, "Hark you, I shall have to let the tree fall." The tailor sprang nimbly down, seized the tree with both arms as if he had been carrying it, and said to the giant, "You are such a great fellow, and yet cannot even carry the tree." They went on together, and as they passed a cherry tree, the giant laid hold of the top of the tree where the ripest fruit was hanging, bent it down, gave it into the tailor's hand, and bade him eat. But the little tailor was much too weak to hold the tree, and when the giant let it go, it sprang back again, and the tailor was tossed into the air with it. When he had fallen down again without injury, the giant said, "What is this? Have you not strength enough to hold the weak twig?" "There is no lack of strength," answered the little tailor. "Do you think that could be anything to a man who has struck down 7 at one blow? I leapt over the tree because the huntsmen are shooting down there in the thicket. Jump as I did if you can do it." The giant made the attempt, but he could not get over the tree and remained hanging in the branches. So that in this also the tailor kept the upper hand. The giant said, "If you are such a valiant fellow, come with me into our cavern and spend the night with us." The little tailor was willing and followed him. When they went into the cave, other giants were sitting there by the fire, and each of them had a roasted sheep in his hand and was eating it. The little tailor looked round and thought, "It is much more spacious here than in my workshop." The giant showed him a bed and said he was to lie down in it and sleep. The bed, however, was too big for the little tailor. He did not lie down in it, but crept into a corner. When it was midnight, and the giant thought that the little tailor was lying in a sound sleep, he got up, took a great iron bar, cut through the bed with one blow, and thought he had finished off the grasshopper for good. With the earliest dawn, the giants went into the forest and had quite forgotten the little tailor when all at once he walked up to them quite merrily and boldly. The giants were terrified. They were afraid that he would strike them all dead and ran away in a great hurry. The little tailor went onwards, always following his own pointed nose. After he had walked for a long time, he came to the courtyard of a royal palace. And as he felt weary, he lay down on the grass and fell asleep. Whilst he lay there, the people came and inspected him on all sides and read on his belt, 7 at one stroke. "Ah," said they, "what does the great warrior want here in the midst of peace? He must be a mighty lord." They went and announced him to the king and gave it as their opinion that if war should break out, this would be a weighty and useful man who ought on no account to be allowed to depart. The counsel pleased the king, and he sent one of his courtiers to the little tailor to offer him military service when he awoke. The ambassador remained standing by the sleeper, waited until he stretched his limbs and opened his eyes, and then conveyed to him this proposal. "For this very reason have I come here," the tailor replied. "I am ready to enter the king's service." He was therefore honorably received, and a special dwelling was assigned him. The soldiers, however, were set against the little tailor and wished him 1,000 miles away. "What is to be the end of this?" they said among themselves. "If we quarrel with him and he strikes about him, 7 of us will fall at every blow. Not one of us can stand against him." They came therefore to a decision, betook themselves in a body to the king, and begged for their dismissal. "We are not prepared," said they, "to stay with a man who kills 7 at one stroke." The king was sorry that for the sake of one he should lose all his faithful servants, wished that he had never set eyes on the tailor, and would willingly have been rid of him again. But he did not venture to give him his dismissal, for he dreaded lest he should strike him and all his people dead and place himself on the royal throne. He thought about it for a long time, and at last found good counsel. He sent to the little tailor and caused him to be informed that as he was a great warrior, he had one request to make to him. In a forest of his country lived 2 giants who caused great mischief with their robbing, murdering, ravaging, and burning. And no one could approach them without putting himself in danger of death. If the tailor conquered and killed these 2 giants, he would give him his only daughter to wife, and half of his kingdom as a dowry. Likewise, 100 horsemen should go with him to assist him. "That would indeed be a fine thing for a man like me," thought the little tailor. "One is not offered a beautiful princess and half a kingdom every day of one's life." "Oh yes," he replied, "I will soon subdue the giants, and do not require the help of the 100 horsemen to do it. He who can hit 7 with one blow has no need to be afraid of 2. The little tailor went forth, and the 100 horsemen followed him. When he came to the outskirts of the forest, he said to his followers, "Just stay waiting here. I alone will soon finish off the giants." Then he bounded into the forest and looked about right and left. After a while, he perceived both giants. They lay sleeping under a tree, and snored, so that the branches waved up and down. The little tailor, not idle, gathered 2 pockets full of stones, and with these climbed up the tree. When he was halfway up, he slipped down by a branch until he sat just above the sleepers, and then let one stone after another fall on the breast of one of the giants. For a long time, the giant felt nothing. But at last he awoke, pushed his comrade, and said, "Why are you knocking me?" "You must be dreaming," said the other. "I am not knocking you." They laid themselves down to sleep again, and then the tailor threw a stone down on the second. "What is the meaning of this?" cried the other. "Why are you pelting me?" "I am not pelting you," answered the first, growling. They disputed about it for a time, but as they were weary, they let the matter rest, and their eyes closed once more. The little tailor began his game again, picked out the biggest stone, and threw it with all his might on the breast of the first giant. "That is too bad," cried he, and sprang up like a madman, and pushed his companion against the tree until it shook. The other paid him back in the same coin, and they got into such a rage that they tore up trees and belabored each other so long that at last they both fell down dead on the ground at the same time. Then the little tailor leapt down. "It is a lucky thing," said he, "that they did not tear up the tree on which I was sitting, or I should have had to sprint onto another like a squirrel, but we tailors are nimble." He drew out his sword and gave each of them a couple of thrusts in the breast, and then went out to the horsemen and said, "The work is done. I have finished both of them off." But it was hard work. They tore up trees in their sore need and defended themselves with them. But all that is to no purpose when a man like myself comes who can kill 7 at one blow. "Are you not wounded?" asked the horseman. "You need not concern yourself about that," answered the tailor. "They have not bent one hair of mine." The horseman would not believe him, and rode into the forest. There they found the giants swimming in their blood, and all round about lay the torn-up trees. The little tailor demanded of the king the promised reward. He, however, repented of his promise, and again bethought himself how he could get rid of the hero. "Before you receive my daughter and the half of my kingdom," said he to him, "you must perform one more heroic deed. In the forest roams a unicorn which does great harm, and you must catch it first. I fear one unicorn still less than 2 giants. 7 at one blow is my kind of affair." He took a rope and an axe with him, went forth into the forest, and again bade those who were sent with him to wait outside. He had not long to seek. The unicorn soon came towards him and rushed directly on the tailor as if it would gore him with its horn without more ado. "Softly, softly. It can't be done as quickly as that," said he, and stood still, and waited until the animal was quite close, and then sprang nimbly behind the tree. The unicorn ran against the tree with all its strength, and stuck its horn so fast in the trunk that it had not the strength enough to draw it out again, and thus it was caught. "Now I have got the bird," said the tailor, and came out from behind the tree and put the rope around its neck. And then with his axe, he hewed the horn out of the tree. And when all was ready, he led the beast away and took it to the king. The king still would not give him the promised reward, and made a third demand. Before the wedding, the tailor was to catch him a wild boar that made great havoc in the forest, and the huntsmen should give him their help. "Willingly," said the tailor. "That is child's play." He did not take the huntsmen with him into the forest, and they were well pleased that he did not, for the wild boar had several times received them in such a manner that they had no inclination to lie in wait for him. When the boar perceived the tailor, it ran on him with foaming mouth and whetted tusks and was about to throw him to the ground. But the hero fled and sprang into a chapel which was near and up to the window at once, and in one bound out again. The boar ran after him, but the tailor ran around outside and shut the door behind it. And then the raging beast, which was much too heavy and awkward to leap out of the window, was caught. The little tailor called the huntsmen thither that they might see the prisoner with their own eyes. The hero, however, went to the king, who was now, whether he liked it or not, obliged to keep his promise, and gave his daughter and the half of his kingdom. Had he known that it was no warlike hero, but a little tailor who was standing before him, it would have gone to his heart still more than it did. The wedding was held with great magnificence and small joy, and out of a tailor, a king was made. After some time, the young queen heard her husband say in his dreams at night, "Boy, make me the doublet and patch the pantaloons, or else I will wrap the yard measure over your ears." Then she discovered in what state of life the young lord had been born, and next morning complained of her wrongs to her father, and begged him to help her to get rid of her husband, who was nothing else but a tailor. The king comforted her and said, "Leave your bedroom door open this night, and my servant shall stand outside, and when he has fallen asleep, shall go in, bind him, and take him on board a ship, which shall carry him into the wide world." The woman was satisfied with this, but the king's armor-bearer, who had heard all, was friendly with the young lord, and informed him of the whole plot. "I'll put a screw into that business," said the little tailor. At night, he went to bed with his wife at the usual time, and when she thought that he had fallen asleep, she got up, opened the door, and then lay down again. The little tailor, who was only pretending to be asleep, began to cry out in a clear voice, "Boy, make me the doublet, and patch me the pantaloons, or I will wrap the yard measure over your ears. I smote 7 at one blow. I killed 2 giants. I brought away 1 unicorn, and caught a wild boar. And am I to fear those who are standing outside the room?" When these men heard the tailor speaking thus, they were overcome by a great dread and ran as if the wild huntsmen were behind them, and none of them would venture anything further against him. So the little tailor was and remained a king to the end of his life. The Bremen Town Musicians. A certain man had a donkey which had carried the corn sacks to the mill indefatigably for many a long year. But his strength was going, and he was growing more and more unfit for work. Then his master began to consider how he might best save his keep. But the donkey, seeing that no good wind was blowing, ran away and set out on the road to Bremen. "There," he thought, "I can surely be town musician." When he had walked some distance, he found a hound lying on the road, gasping like one who had run till he was tired. "What are you gasping so for, you big fellow?" asked the donkey. "Ah," replied the hound, "as I am old and daily grow weaker, and no longer can hunt. My master wanted to kill me, so I took to flight. But now, how am I to earn my bread?" "I tell you what," said the donkey, "I am going to Bremen and shall be town musician there. Go with me and engage yourself also as a musician. I will play the lute and you shall beat the kettle drum." The hound agreed, and on they went. Before long they came to a cat sitting on the path with a face like 3 rainy days. "Now then, old shaver, what has gone askew with you?" asked the donkey. "Who can be merry when his neck is in danger?" answered the cat. "Because I am now getting old, and my teeth are worn to stumps, and I prefer to sit by the fire and spin rather than hunt about after mice. My mistress wanted to drown me, so I ran away. But now good advice is scarce. Where am I to go? Go with us to Bremen. You understand night music. You can be a town musician." The cat thought well of it and went with them. After this, the 3 fugitives came to a farmyard where the rooster was sitting upon the gate, crowing with all his might. "Your crow goes through and through one," said the donkey. "What is the matter?" "I have been foretelling fine weather because it is the day on which Our Lady washes the Christ child's little shirts and wants to dry them," said the rooster. "But guests are coming for Sunday, so the housewife has no pity and has told the cook that she intends to eat me in the soup tomorrow, and this evening I am to have my head cut off. Now I am crowing at full pitch while I can." "Ah, but Red Comb," said the donkey, "you had better come away with us. We are going to Bremen. You can find something better than death everywhere. You have a good voice, and if we make music together, it must have some quality." The rooster agreed to this plan, and all 4 went on together. They could not, however, reach the city of Bremen in one day, and in the evening they came to a forest where they meant to pass the night. The donkey and the hound laid themselves down under a large tree. The cat and the rooster settled themselves in the branches. The rooster flew right to the top where he was most safe. Before he went to sleep, he looked around to all 4 points of the compass and thought he saw in the distance a little spark burning. So he called out to his companions that there must be a house not far off, for he saw a light. The donkey said, "If so, we had better get up and go on, for the shelter here is bad." The hound thought that a few bones with some meat on would do him good, too. So they made their way to the place where the light was, and soon saw it shine brighter and grow larger, until they came to a well-lighted robber's house. The donkey, as the tallest, went to the window and looked in. "What do you see, my gray horse?" asked the rooster. "What do I see?" answered the donkey. "A table covered with good things to eat and drink, and robbers sitting at it, enjoying themselves." "That would just suit us," said the rooster. "Yes, indeed. "I wish we were there," said the donkey. Then they consulted together how they might drive away the robbers, and at last they hit upon a plan. The donkey was to place himself with his 4 feet upon the window sill. The hound was to jump on the donkey's back. The cat was to climb upon the dog, and lastly, the rooster was to fly up and perch upon the head of the cat. When this was done, at a given signal, they began to perform their music together. The donkey brayed, the hound barked, the cat mewed, and the rooster crowed. Then they burst through the window into the room so that the glass clattered. At this horrible din, the robbers sprang up, thinking no otherwise than that a ghost had come in and fled in a great fright out into the forest. The 4 companions now sat down at the table, well content with what was left, and ate as if they were going to fast for a month. As soon as the 4 minstrels had done, they put out the light, and each sought for himself a sleeping place according to his nature and to what suited him. The donkey laid himself down upon some straw in the yard, the hound behind the door, the cat upon the hearth near the warm ashes, and the rooster perched himself upon a beam of the roof, and being tired from their long walk, they soon went to sleep. When midnight came and the robbers saw from afar that the light was no longer burning in their house and all appeared quiet, the captain said, "We should not have let ourselves be frightened out of our wits," and ordered one of them to go and examine the house. The messenger found all still, went into the kitchen to light a candle, and taking the glowing fiery eyes of the cat for live coals, he held a match to them to light it. But the cat did not understand the joke and flew in his face, spitting and scratching. He was dreadfully frightened and ran to the back door. But the dog who lay there sprang up and bit his leg. And as he ran across the yard by the straw heap, the donkey gave him a smart kick with his hind foot. The rooster too, who had been awakened by the noise and had become lively, cried down from the beam, "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" Then the robber ran back as fast as he could to his captain and said, "Oh, there is a horrible witch sitting in the house, who spat on me and scratched my face with her long claws. And by the door stands a man with a knife who stabbed me in the leg. And in the yard there lies a black monster who beat me with a wooden club. And above, upon the roof, sits the judge who called out, 'Bring the rogue here to me.' So I got away as well as I could." From that time forth, the robbers did not dare go back into the house, but the 4 Bremen musicians liked it so well there that they never left it again. And the person who last told that tale says his mouth is still warm. The Golden Goose. There was a man who had 3 sons. The youngest was called Simpleton and was despised, mocked, and put down on every occasion. It happened one day that the eldest son wanted to go into the forest to cut wood. And before he went, his mother gave him a delicious pancake and a bottle of wine so that he might not suffer from hunger or thirst. When he entered the forest, he met a little gray-haired old man who bade him good day and said, "Give me a piece of cake from your pocket, and let me have a drink of your wine. I am so hungry and thirsty." But the clever son answered, "If I give you my cake and wine, I shall have none for myself. Be off with you." And he left the little man standing and went on. But when he began to cut down a tree, it wasn't long before he made a false stroke, and the axe cut him in the arm so that he had to go home and have it bandaged. This was the work of the little gray man. After this, the second son went into the forest, and his mother gave him, like the eldest, a cake and a bottle of wine. The little old gray man met him likewise, and asked him for a piece of cake and a drink of wine. But the second son too said with much reason, "What I give you will be taken away from myself. Be off." And he left the little man standing and went on. His punishment, however, was not delayed. When he had made a few strokes at the tree, he struck himself in the leg so that he had to be carried home. Then Simpleton said, "Father, do let me go and cut wood." The father answered, "Your brothers have hurt themselves doing so. Leave it alone. You do not understand anything about it." But Simpleton begged so long that at last he said, "Just go then. You'll learn by getting hurt." His mother gave him a cake which had been made with water and baked in the cinders, and with it a bottle of sour beer. When he came to the forest, the little old gray man met him likewise, and greeting him said, "Give me a piece of your cake and a drink out of your bottle. I am so hungry and thirsty." Simpleton answered, "I have only cinder cake and sour beer. If that pleases you, we will sit down and eat." So they sat down. And when Simpleton pulled out his cinder cake, it was a fine sweet cake, and the sour beer had become good wine. So they ate and drank. And after that, the little man said, "Since you have a good heart and are willing to divide what you have, I will give you good luck. There stands an old tree, cut it down, and you will find something at the roots." Then the old man took leave of him. Simpleton went and cut down the tree, and when it fell, there was a goose sitting in the roots with feathers of pure gold. He lifted her up, and taking her with him, went to an inn where he intended to pass the night. Now the host had 3 daughters who saw the goose and were curious to know what such a wonderful bird might be, and would have liked to have one of its golden feathers. The eldest thought, "I shall soon find an opportunity of pulling out a feather." And as soon as Simpleton had gone out, she seized the goose by the wing. But her finger and hand remained sticking fast to it. The second came soon afterward, thinking only of how she might get a feather for herself, but she had scarcely touched her sister. Then she was held fast. At last, the third also came with a like intent, and the others screamed out, "Keep away! For goodness' sake, keep away!" But she did not understand why she was to keep away. "The others are there," she thought. "I may as well be there too," and ran to them. But as soon as she had touched her sister, she remained sticking fast to her, so they had to spend the night with the goose. The next morning, Simpleton took the goose under his arm and set out without troubling himself about the 3 girls who were hanging on to it. They were obliged to run after him continually, now left, now right, wherever his legs took him. In the middle of the fields, the parson met them, and when he saw the procession, he said, "For shame, you good-for-nothing girls! Why are you running across the fields after this young man? Is that seemly?" At the same time, he seized the youngest by the hand in order to pull her away. But as soon as he touched her, he likewise stuck fast and was himself obliged to run behind. Before long, the sexton came by and saw his master, the parson, running behind 3 girls. He was astonished at this and called out, "Hi, your reverence! Where are you going so quickly? Do not forget that we have a christening today." And running after him, he took him by the sleeve, but was also held fast to it. While the 5 were trotting thus, one behind the other, 2 laborers came with their hoes from the fields. The parson called out to them and begged that they would set him and the sexton free, but they had scarcely touched the sexton when they were held fast. And now there were 7 of them running behind Simpleton and the goose. Soon afterward he came to a city where a king ruled who had a daughter who was so serious that no one could make her laugh. So he had put forth a decree that whoever should be able to make her laugh should marry her. When Simpleton heard this, he went with his goose and all her train before the king's daughter. And as soon as she saw the 7 people running on, one behind the other, she began to laugh quite loudly, and as if she would never stop. Thereupon, Simpleton asked to have her for his wife. But the king did not like the son-in-law, and made all manner of excuses, and said he must first produce a man who could drink a cellar full of wine. Simpleton thought of the little gray man who could certainly help him. So he went into the forest, and in the same place where he had felled the tree, he saw a man sitting who had a very sorrowful face. Simpleton asked him what he was taking to heart so sorely, and he answered, "I have such a great thirst and cannot quench it. Cold water I cannot stand. A barrel of wine I have just emptied, but that to me is like a drop on a hot stone." "There I can help you," said Simpleton. "Just come with me and you shall be satisfied." He led him into the king's cellar, and the man bent over the huge barrels and drank till his loins hurt, and before the day was out, he had emptied all the barrels. Then Simpleton again demanded his bride. But the king was vexed that such an ugly fellow whom everyone called Simpleton should take away his daughter, and he made a new condition. He must first find a man who could eat a whole mountain of bread. Simpleton did not think long, but went straight into the forest, where in the same place there sat a man who was tying up his body with a strap, and making an awful face, and saying, "I have eaten a whole oven full of rolls. But what good is that when one has such a hunger as I? My stomach remains empty, and I must tie myself up if I am not to die of hunger." At this Simpleton was glad and said, "Get up and come with me. You shall eat yourself full." He led him to the king's palace where all the flour in the whole kingdom was collected, and from it he caused a huge mountain of bread to be baked. The man from the forest stood before it, began to eat, and by the end of one day the whole mountain had vanished. For the 3rd time, Simpleton demanded his bride. But the king again sought a way out and ordered a ship which could sail on land and on water. "As soon as you come sailing back in it," said he, "you shall have my daughter for wife." Simpleton went straight into the forest, and there sat the little gray man to whom he had given his cake. When he heard what Simpleton wanted, he said, "Since you have given me to eat and to drink, I will give you the ship. And I do all this because you once were kind to me." Then he gave him the ship which could sail on land and water. And when the king saw that, he could no longer prevent him from having his daughter. The wedding was celebrated. And after the king's death, Simpleton inherited his kingdom and lived for a long time contentedly with his wife. Tom Thumb. There was once a poor countryman who sat in the evening by the hearth and poked the fire, and his wife sat and spun. Then said he, "How sad it is that we have no children. With us all is so quiet, and in other houses it is noisy and lively." "Yes," replied the wife and sighed. "Even if we had only one, and it were quite small, and only as big as a thumb, I should be quite satisfied, and we would still love it with all our hearts." Now it so happened that the woman fell ill and after 7 months gave birth to a child that was perfect in all its limbs but no longer than a thumb. Then said they, "It is as we wished it to be, and it shall be our dear child," and because of its size, they called it Tom Thumb. They did not let it want for food, but the child did not grow taller, but remained as it had been at the first. Nevertheless, it looked sensibly out of its eyes, and soon showed itself to be a wise and nimble creature, for everything it did turned out well. One day the peasant was getting ready to go into the forest to cut wood, when he said, as if to himself, "How I wish that there was someone who would bring the cart to me." "Oh, father," cried Tom Thumb, "I will soon bring the cart. Rely on that. It shall be in the forest at the appointed time." The man smiled and said, "How can that be done? You are far too small to lead the horse by the reins." "That doesn't matter, father, if my mother will only harness it. I shall sit in the horse's ear and call out to him how he is to go." "Well," answered the man, "for once we will try it." When the time came, the mother harnessed the horse and placed Tom Thumb in its ear. And then the little creature cried, "Gee up, gee up." Then it went quite properly, as if with its master, and the cart went the right way into the forest. It so happened that just as he was turning a corner and the little one was crying, "Hey now then, gee up, 2 strange men came towards him. "My word," said one of them, "what is this? There is a cart coming and a driver is calling to the horse and still he is not to be seen." "That can't be right," said the other. "We will follow the cart and see where it stops." The cart, however, drove right into the forest and exactly to the place where the wood had been cut. When Tom Thumb saw his father, he cried to him, "See, father, here I am with the cart. Now take me down." The father got hold of the horse with his left hand, and with the right took his little son out of the ear. Tom Thumb sat down quite merrily on a straw, but when the 2 strange men saw him, they did not know what to say for astonishment. Then one of them took the other aside and said, "Listen, the little fellow would make our fortune if we exhibited him in a large town for money. We will buy him." They went to the peasant and said, "Sell us the little man. He shall be well treated with us." "No," replied the father. "He is the apple of my eye, and all the money in the world cannot buy him from me." Tom Thumb, however, when he heard of the bargain, had crept up the folds of his father's coat, placed himself on his shoulder, and whispered in his ear, "Father, do give me away. I will soon come back again." Then the father parted with him to the 2 men for a handsome bit of money. "Where do you want to sit?" They said to him, "Oh, just set me on the rim of your hat. Then I can walk backwards and forwards and look at the country and still not fall down." They did as he wished, and when Tom Thumb had taken leave of his father, they went away with him. They walked until it was dusk, and then the little fellow said, "Do take me down. I want to come down." The man took his hat off and put the little fellow on the ground by the wayside, and he leapt and crept about a little between the sods. And then he suddenly slipped into a mouse hole which he had sought out. "Good evening, gentlemen. Just go home without me," he called to them and mocked them. They ran thither and stuck their sticks into the mouse hole, but it was all in vain. Tom Thumb crept still farther in, and as it soon became quite dark, they were forced to go home with their vexation and their empty purses. When Tom Thumb saw that they were gone, he crept back out of the subterranean passage. "It is so dangerous to walk on the ground in the dark," said he. "How easily a neck or a leg is broken." Fortunately, he knocked against an empty snail shell. "Thank God," said he, "in that I can pass the night in safety," and got into it. Not long afterwards, when he was just going to sleep, he heard two men go by, and one of them was saying, "How shall we set about getting hold of the rich pastor's silver and gold?" "I could tell you that," cried Tom Thumb, interrupting them. "What was that?" said one of the thieves in a fright. "I heard someone speaking." They stood still listening, and Tom Thumb spoke again and said, "Take me with you and I'll help you." "But where are you?" asked they. "Just look on the ground and observe from whence my voice comes," he replied. There the thieves at length found him and lifted him up. "You little imp, how will you help us?" they said. "A lot," said he. "I will creep into the pastor's room through the iron bars and will reach out to you whatever you want to have." "Come then," they said, "and we will see what you can do." When they got to the pastor's house, Tom Thumb crept into the room, but instantly cried out with all his might, "Do you want to have everything that is here?" The thieves were alarmed and said, "But do speak softly so as not to waken anyone." Tom Thumb, however, behaved as if he had not understood this and cried again, "What do you want? Do you want to have everything that is here?" The cook, who slept in the next room, heard this and sat up in bed and listened. The thieves, however, had in their fright run some distance away, but at last they took courage and thought, "The little rascal wants to mock us." They came back and whispered to him, "Come, be serious and reach something out to us." Then Tom Thumb again cried as loudly as he could, "I really will give you everything. Just put your hands in." The maid, who was listening, heard this quite distinctly and jumped out of bed and rushed to the door. The thieves took flight and ran as if the wild huntsmen were behind them. But as the maid could not see anything, she went to strike a light. When she came to the place with it, Tom Thumb, unperceived, betook himself to the granary, and the maid, after she had examined every corner and found nothing, lay down in her bed again, and believed that, after all, she had only been dreaming with open eyes and ears. Tom Thumb had climbed up among the hay and found a beautiful place to sleep in. There he intended to rest until day and then go home again to his parents. But he had other things to go through. Truly, there is much affliction and misery in this world. When day dawned, the maid arose to feed the cows. Her first walk was into the barn, where she laid hold of an armful of hay, and precisely the very one in which poor Tom Thumb was lying asleep. He, however, was sleeping so soundly that he was aware of nothing, and did not awake until he was in the mouth of the cow, who had picked him up with the hay. "Ah, heavens!" cried he, "how have I got into the fulling mill?" But he soon discovered where he was. Then it was necessary to be careful not to let himself go between the teeth and be dismembered. But he was nevertheless forced to slip down into the stomach with the hay. "In this little room the windows are forgotten," said he, "and no sun shines in. Neither will a candle be brought." His quarters were especially unpleasing to him, and the worst was that more and more hay was always coming in by the door, and the space grew less and less. Then, at length in his anguish, he cried as loud as he could, "Bring me no more fodder! Bring me no more fodder!" The maid was just milking the cow, and when she heard someone speaking and saw no one, and perceived that it was the same voice that she had heard in the night, she was so terrified that she slipped off her stool and spilled the milk. She ran in great haste to her master and said, "Oh heavens, pastor, the cow has been speaking." "You are crazy," replied the pastor. But he went himself to the stable to see what was going on there. Hardly, however, had he set his foot in the threshold. Then Tom Thumb again cried, "Bring me no more fodder! Bring me no more fodder!" Then the pastor himself was alarmed and thought that an evil spirit had gone into the cow and ordered her to be killed. She was killed, but the stomach in which Tom Thumb was thrown on the dunghill. Tom Thumb had great difficulty in working his way out. However, he succeeded so far as to get some room, but just as he was going to thrust his head out, a new misfortune occurred. A hungry wolf ran thither and swallowed the whole stomach at one gulp. Tom Thumb did not lose courage. "Perhaps," thought he, "the wolf will listen to what I have to say," and he called to him from out of his stomach, "Dear wolf, I know of a magnificent feast for you." "Where is it to be had?" said the wolf. "In such and such a house. You must creep into it through the kitchen sink and will find cakes and bacon and sausages and as much of them as you can eat." And he described to him exactly his father's house. The wolf did not require to be told this twice, squeezed himself in at night through the sink, and ate to his heart's content in the larder. When he had eaten his fill, he wanted to go out again, but he had become so big that he could not go out by the same way. Tom Thumb had reckoned on this, and now began to make a violent noise in the wolf's body and raged and screamed as loudly as he could. "Will you be quiet?" said the wolf. "You will waken up the people." "What?" replied the little fellow. "You have eaten your fill, and I will make merry likewise," and began once more to scream with all his strength. At last his father and mother were aroused by it, and ran to the room and looked in through the opening in the door. When they saw that a wolf was inside, they ran away. And the husband fetched his axe and the wife the scythe. "Stay behind," said the man when they entered the room. "When I have given him a blow, if he is not killed by it, you must cut him down and hew his body to pieces." Then Tom Thumb heard his parents' voices and cried, "Dear father, I am here." "I am in the wolf's body," said the father, full of joy. "Thank God, our dear child has found us again," and bade the woman take away her scythe that Tom Thumb might not be hurt with it. After that he raised his arm and struck the wolf such a blow on his head that he fell down dead. And then they got knives and scissors and cut his body open and drew the little fellow forth. "Ah," said the father, "what sorrow we have gone through for your sake." "Yes, father, I have gone about the world a great deal. Thank heaven I breathe fresh air again." "Where have you been then?" asked they. "Ah, father, I have been in a mouse's hole, in a cow's stomach, and then in a wolf's. Now I will stay with you. And we will not sell you again." "No, not for all the riches in the world," said his parents. And they embraced and kissed their dear Tom Thumb. They gave him to eat and to drink and had some new clothes made for him, for his own had been spoiled on his journey. Mother Holly. Once upon a time there was a widow who had 2 daughters. One of them was beautiful and industrious, the other ugly and lazy. The mother, however, loved the ugly and lazy one best because she was her own daughter. And so the other, who was only her stepdaughter, was made to do all the work of the house and was quite the Cinderella of the family. Her stepmother sent her out every day to sit by the well in the high road, there to spin until she made her fingers bleed. Now it chanced one day that some blood fell onto the spindle, and as the girl stooped over the well to wash it off, the spindle suddenly sprang out of her hand and fell into the well. She ran home crying to tell of her misfortune. But her stepmother was merciless. "Since you have let the spindle fall in, you must fetch it out again," she said, and drove the girl back to the well. The poor girl returned to the well, not knowing what to do. In her distress, she jumped into the well to find the spindle. She lost consciousness, and when she awoke she found herself in a beautiful meadow where the sun was shining and thousands of flowers were blooming. She walked across this meadow and soon came to a baker's oven full of bread. The bread called out, "Oh, take me out! Take me out, or I shall burn. I have been baked a long time." So she went up to it, and with the bread shovel took out all the loaves one after another. After that she went on till she came to a tree covered with apples, which called to her, "Oh, shake me, shake me! We apples are all ripe." So she shook the tree till the apples fell like rain. And she continued shaking until there were no more to fall. Then she gathered them all into a heap and went on her way. At last she came to a small house, and there she saw an old woman looking out with such large teeth that the girl was frightened and about to run away. But the old woman called after her, "What are you afraid of, dear child? Stay with me. If you will do all the work in the house properly, you shall be the better for it. Only you must take care to make my bed well and shake it thoroughly till the feathers fly, for then it snows in the world. I am Mother Holly." As the old woman spoke so kindly to her, the girl took courage and agreed to enter her service. She took care to do everything according to the old woman's bidding. And every time she made the bed, she shook it with all her might, so that the feathers flew about like so many snowflakes. The old woman was as good as her word. She never spoke angrily to her and gave her roast and boiled meats every day, so she stayed on with Mother Holly for some time, and then she began to grow unhappy. She could not at first tell why she felt sad. But she became conscious at last of a great longing to go home. Then she knew she was homesick, although she was 1,000 times better off with Mother Holly than with her mother and sister. After waiting a while, she went to Mother Holly and said, "I am so homesick that I cannot stay with you any longer, for although I am so happy here, I must return to my own people." Then Mother Holly said, "I am pleased that you should want to go back to your own people, and as you have served me so well and faithfully, I will take you home myself." Thereupon she led the girl by the hand up to a broad gateway. The gate was opened, and as the girl passed through, a shower of gold fell upon her, and the gold clung to her, so that she was covered with it from head to foot. "That is a reward for your industry," said Mother Holly. And as she spoke, she handed her the spindle which she had dropped into the well. The gate was then closed, and the girl found herself back in the world, not far from her mother's house. As she went into the yard, the rooster was standing by the well, and cried, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, your golden girls come back to you." So she went in to her mother and sister, and as she was so richly covered with gold, they gave her a warm welcome. She related to them all that had happened. And when the mother heard how she had come by her great riches, she was very anxious to secure the same good fortune for her ugly and lazy daughter, so she had her sit by the well and spin, and in order that her spindle might be stained with blood, she stuck her finger and pushed her hand into a thorn bush. Then she threw the spindle into the well and jumped in after it. She found herself like her sister in the beautiful meadow and walked along the same path. When she came to the baker's oven, the bread called out, "Oh, take me out! Take me out, or I shall burn. I have been baked a long time." But the lazy girl answered, "Do you think I want to soil my hands?" and walked on. Soon she came to the apple tree, which called out, "Oh, shake me! Shake me! We apples are all ripe." But she only said, "I'm not going to shake you. One of you might fall on my head," and went on. At last she came to Mother Holly's house. And as she had heard of her big teeth, she was not afraid, but engaged herself to her immediately. The first day she was very industrious and obeyed Mother Holly when she told her to work, for she was thinking of all the gold she would get. But on the second day she began to be lazy. And on the third day she was even more so and would not get up in the morning. Neither did she make Mother Holly's bed properly, nor shake it so that the feathers flew. Mother Holly was soon tired of this and told her she must go. The lazy girl was delighted at this and thought that now the shower of gold would come. Mother Holly led her to the gate. But as she was passing through, instead of gold, a great kettle full of pitch was emptied over her. "That is the reward for your services," said Mother Holly, and shut the gate. So the lazy girl went home covered with pitch, and the rooster on the well called out, "Cock-a-doodle-doo, your pitch-covered girls come back to you." The pitch stuck to her as long as she lived and never came off. The 12 Dancing Princesses. There was once a king who had 12 beautiful daughters. They slept in 12 beds all in one room. And when they went to bed, the doors were shut and locked up. But every morning, their shoes were found to be quite worn through, as if they had been danced in all night. And yet nobody could find out how it happened or where they had been. Then the king made it known to all the land that if any person could discover the secret and find out where it was that the princesses danced in the night, he should have the one he liked best for his wife and should be king after his death. But whoever tried and did not succeed after 3 days and nights should be put to death. A king's son soon came. He was well entertained, and in the evening was taken to the chamber next to the one where the princesses lay in their 12 beds. There he was to sit and watch where they went to dance, and in order that nothing might pass without his hearing it, the door of his chamber was left open. But the king's son soon fell asleep. And when he awoke in the morning, he found that the princesses had all been dancing, for the soles of their shoes were full of holes. The same thing happened the second and third night. So the king ordered his head to be cut off. After him came several others, but they had all the same luck, and all lost their lives in the same manner. Now it happened that an old soldier who had been wounded in battle and could fight no longer passed through the country where this king reigned. And as he was traveling through a wood, he met an old woman who asked him where he was going. "I hardly know where I am going or what I had better do," said the soldier. "But I think I should like very well to find out where it is that the princesses dance, and then in time I might be a king." "Well," said the old dame, That is no very hard task. Only take care not to drink any of the wine which one of the princesses will bring to you in the evening, and as soon as she leaves, you pretend to be fast asleep. Then she gave him a cloak and said, as soon as you put that on, you will become invisible, and you will then be able to follow the princesses wherever they go. When the soldier heard all this good counsel, he determined to try his luck. So he went to the king and said he was willing to undertake the task. He was as well received as the others had been, and the king ordered fine royal robes to be given him. And when the evening came, he was led to the outer chamber. Just as he was going to lie down, the eldest of the princesses brought him a cup of wine. But the soldier threw it all away secretly, taking care not to drink a drop. Then he laid himself down on his bed, and in a little while began to snore very loud, as if he was fast asleep. When the 12 princesses heard this, they laughed heartily. And the eldest said, this fellow too might have done a wiser thing than lose his life in this way. Then they rose up and opened their drawers and boxes and took out all their fine clothes and dressed themselves at the mirror and skipped about as if they were eager to begin dancing. But the youngest said, I don't know how it is. While you are so happy, I feel very uneasy. I am sure some mischance will befall us. You simpleton, said the eldest, you are always afraid. Have you forgotten how many kings' sons have already watched in vain? And as for this soldier, even if I had not given him his sleeping draught, he would have slept soundly enough. When they were all ready, they went and looked at the soldier. But he snored on and did not stir a hand or foot, so they thought they were quite safe. And the eldest went up to her own bed and clapped her hands, and the bed sank into the floor, and a trapdoor flew open. The soldier saw them going down through the trapdoor one after another, the eldest leading the way. And thinking he had no time to lose, he jumped up, put on the cloak which the old woman had given him, and followed them. But in the middle of the stairs, he trod on the gown of the youngest princess, and she cried out to her sisters, all is not right. Someone took hold of my gown. You silly creature, said the eldest. It is nothing but a nail in the wall. Then down they all went, and at the bottom they found themselves in a most delightful grove of trees, and the leaves were all of silver and glittered and sparkled beautifully. The soldier wished to take away some token of the place. So he broke off a little branch, and there came a loud noise from the tree. Then the youngest daughter said again, I am sure all is not right. Did not you hear that noise? That never happened before. But the eldest said, it is only our princes who are shouting for joy at our approach. Then they came to another grove of trees, where all the leaves were of gold, and afterward to a third, where the leaves were all glittering diamonds. And the soldier broke a branch from each. And every time there was a loud noise, which made the youngest sister tremble with fear, but the eldest still said, it was only the princes who were crying for joy. So they went on till they came to a great lake. And at the side of the lake, there lay 12 little boats with 12 handsome princes in them, who seemed to be waiting there for the princesses. One of the princesses went into each boat, and the soldier stepped into the same boat with the youngest. As they were rowing over the lake, the prince who was in the boat with the youngest princess and the soldier said, I do not know why it is, but though I am rowing with all my might, we do not get on so fast as usual, and I am quite tired. The boat seems very heavy today. It is only the heat of the weather, said the princess. I feel it very warm too. On the other side of the lake stood a fine illuminated castle, from which came the merry music of horns and trumpets. There they all landed and went into the castle, and each prince danced with his princess. And the soldier, who was all the time invisible, danced with them, too. And when any of the princesses had a cup of wine set by her, he drank it all up, so that when she put the cup to her mouth, it was empty. At this too, the youngest sister was terribly frightened, but the eldest always silenced her. They danced on till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then all their shoes were worn out, so that they were obliged to leave off. The princes rowed them back again over the lake, but this time the soldier placed himself in the boat with the eldest princess, and on the opposite shore, they took leave of each other, the princesses promising to come again the next night. When they came to the stairs, the soldier ran on before the princesses and laid himself down. And as the 12 sisters slowly came up very much tired, they heard him snoring in his bed. So they said, now all is quite safe. Then they undressed themselves, put away their fine clothes, pulled off their shoes, and went to bed. In the morning, the soldier said nothing about what had happened, but determined to see more of this strange adventure, and went again the second and third night, and everything happened just as before. The princesses danced each time till their shoes were worn to pieces, and then returned home. However, on the third night, the soldier carried away one of the golden cups as a token of where he had been. As soon as the time came when he was to declare the secret, he was taken before the king with the 3 branches and the golden cup. And the 12 princesses stood listening behind the door to hear what he would say. And when the king asked him, "Where do my 12 daughters dance at night?" he answered, "With 12 princes in a castle underground." And then he told the king all that had happened and showed him the 3 branches and the golden cup which he had brought with him. Then the king called for the princesses and asked them whether what the soldier said was true. And when they saw that they were discovered and that it was of no use to deny what had happened, they confessed it all. And the king asked the soldier which of them he would choose for his wife. And he answered, "I am not very young, so I will have the eldest." And they were married that very day, and the soldier was chosen to be the king's heir. The girl without hands. A certain miller had fallen into poverty, and had nothing left but his mill and a large apple tree behind it. One day he had gone into the forest to fetch wood when an old man stepped up to him whom he had never seen before and said, "Why do you plague yourself with cutting wood? I will make you rich if you will promise me what is standing behind your mill." "What can that be but my apple tree?" thought the miller, and said, "Yes," and gave a written promise to the stranger. He however laughed mockingly and said, "When 3 years have passed, I will come and carry away what belongs to me." And then he went. When the miller got home, his wife came to meet him and said, "Tell me, miller, from whence comes this sudden wealth into our house?" All at once all the cupboards and chests were filled. No one brought it in, and I know not how it happened. It comes from a stranger who met me in the forest and promised me great treasure. I in return have promised him what stands behind the mill. We can very well give him the big apple tree for it." "Ah, husband," said the terrified wife, "that must have been the devil. He did not mean the apple tree, but our daughter who was standing behind the mill sweeping the yard." The miller's daughter was a beautiful, pious girl, and lived through the 3 years in the fear of God and without sin. When therefore the time was over, and the day came when the evil one was to fetch her, she washed herself clean and made a circle round herself with chalk. The devil appeared quite early, but he could not come near to her. Angrily he said to the miller, "Take all water away from her that she may no longer be able to wash herself, for otherwise I have no power over her." The miller was afraid and did so. The next morning the devil came again. But she had wept on her hands and they were quite clean. Again he could not get near her and furiously said to the miller, "Cut her hands off or else I cannot get the better of her." The miller was shocked and answered, "How could I cut off my own child's hands?" Then the evil one threatened him and said, "If you do not do it, you are mine, and I will take you yourself." The father became alarmed and promised to obey him. So he went to the girl and said, "My child, if I do not cut off both your hands, the devil will carry me away, and in my terror I have promised to do it. Help me in my need, and forgive me the harm I do you." She replied, "Dear father, do with me what you will. I am your child." Thereupon she laid down both her hands and let them be cut off. The devil came for the 3rd time, but she had wept so long and so much on the stumps that after all they were quite clean. Then he had to give in and had lost all right over her. The miller said to her, "I have by means of you received such great wealth that I will keep you most delicately as long as you live." But she replied, "Here I cannot stay. I will go forth. Compassionate people will give me as much as I require." Thereupon she caused her maimed arms to be bound to her back, and by sunrise she set out on her way, and walked the whole day until night fell. Then she came to a royal garden, and by the shimmering of the moon she saw that trees covered with beautiful fruits grew in it, but she could not enter, for there was much water round about it. And as she had walked the whole day and not eaten one mouthful, and hunger torment,